Welcome to the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee, and today we have with us Hannah Otto, professional gravel cyclist for Scott Bikes, competitive cyclist, plenty of other amazing brands. Hannah, it's good to have you back with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're going to kick it off. Well, we have some great questions, I should say, beforehand. We have some great questions about Zone 2 training. We also have questions that we're going to get into about like overdoing it and your signs that you're doing too much. But first things first, we're going to get into some rapid fire questions. We haven't done this in a long time, but I felt like doing it with you, Hannah. We'll get to see. You can play along at home. Answer out your own questions when you're listening to this. All right, Hannah, are you ready for rapid fire?
Yeah, I guess so. I had way too much fun thinking about these questions ahead of time, so I'll try and keep them really rapid.
You can break the rapid rules. It's okay. It's okay. This is also very sponsor correct, by the way. Shimano Rapid Fire, and you are a Shimano athlete. So that's one of their shifting tech things. I promise this isn't sponsored by Shimano. Nobody pays us. Okay. All right. First question. Traditional VO2 max intervals or 30-30s?
I'm going to go with traditional VO2 max intervals because I actually think they're more painful.
Mm. So more benefit, you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
More bang
like
for your buck.
Yeah. All right. 1x or 2x for gravel? You have the choice.
Yeah, I like the 1x. I change according to races sometimes, but I like the 1x because shifting that front derailleur in the middle of like a big group or something can sometimes it's just a little bit, like every second counts.
Yeah, for sure. 90 grams an hour or 120 grams an hour of carbs?
120 an hour. Yeah.
Nice.
I think
that's right.
I don't have a lot of gut issues. Like when it comes to intaking carbs, my biggest boundary is literally, can I get my hand to go to my back pocket?
yeah, for sure. Especially in the racing that you're doing. Breakaway or sprint finish?
I would always rather a breakaway. I think that's the mountain biker in me.
Yeah. Over-unders or hard starts?
Hard starts, because I like the mental aspect to that workout of like, it's so scary to go so hard when you know this interval is not ending anytime soon.
Something interesting on this, I think, I could be wrong. All right, can I please have permission to like take this back? I think I'm right. I think I've got good recollection of this. Hard starts are one of the most commonly struggled with workouts on TrainerRoad, that format.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard toward like, you think that it like, yeah, I can hold sweet spot or whatever after starting out really hard. But then it all starts to kind of like boil up partway through that effort. And then suddenly the normal sweet spot effort is a lot harder when you've worn out all that anaerobic contribution that you have.
I think it's a really good mental one too, because you start that interval and it's like, oh, I can do whatever it is, 2 minutes at VO2, if that's what it is. But you have it in the back of your mind that this is not the end. So your body and your mind wants to hold you back and you're trying to push forward. And it just kind of feels like you're grinding your gears internally of like, I want to go, but I don't want to go. And I'm scared. And I like having to overcome that.
There's also a bit of, for a lot of people listening to this, there are times in your training. Sorry, this is totally not rapid fire. Doesn't matter. There are times when you're training when it feels like, I feel like it would honestly be easier for me to push above the power target than it is to hold this power target.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to this right now and you relate to that and you're watching YouTube, give us a thumbs up on the video. Because sometimes you feel that way. It's harder to actually just hold consistent power. It's easier just to surge past it. And hard starts don't often feel that way, but I do hear from some athletes, at least for me, I never feel that way. I just feel like less would feel nice, not more. But from a lot of athletes, I hear them say like, it's just so hard to dwell at that specific effort after doing that hard spike. They feel like they could throw out another hard little surge or something else like that, but just holding in there, it's really, really difficult. It's very good training, I think, very productive training.
I think it's also, again, really good mentally when you transition from that hard start into the next part, because usually like what I'm repeating to myself is it'll get easier, it'll get easier, it'll get easier, because the start of that interval, you're like, holy cow, sweet spot has never felt so hard. But you have to trust that you're re-entering into the aerobic system and everything will catch up.
Yeah, there's like a curve that happens for me. It's like at first I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels way too hard. and then it stabilizes. And then toward the end of it, compared to a normal interval, I'm like, why is this so hard again?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's good training. 2.4 or 2.2 tires for mountain bikes.
2.4. That's
right.
Yeah. No more
I think the
information
question
needed.
will be, in 1 to 2 years, I think the question will be 2.4 or 2.6. So we'll have to see. Hydration pack or bottles at Sea Otter. It's a gravel race this year.
I'll see the course, but I'm thinking bottles because I can run the mega bottles on my gravel bike. Like the 1 liter guys, yeah.
Yeah. Big dogs. Camel mode. Long climbs or short rollers?
Long climbs. I love just like getting into a pace and suffering.
Nice. Yeah. That's why Hannah's really fast. Ramp test, if you have to pick one, because we all know the answer is AI FTP detection. Subtle plug. But ramp test or 20-minute test?
I think it's going to be really unpopular opinion, but again, 20-minute test. Like,
I honestly prefer it too.
Okay,
Yeah.
because again, I like just getting into a pace and suffering. And also mentally, it's kind of nice to just like, this is the pace. Can I hold it? Versus ramp test, you're like, oh gosh, it's going to get harder. Oh gosh, it's going to get harder. And it's like that fear the whole time.
Yeah, and I should clarify, I prefer it from an effort standpoint. I don't prefer it from a results standpoint, especially for anybody listening to this. The data shows that the 20-minute test is one of the worst ways, or the 8-minute is the worst, 20-minute is second worst, and then after that, it's a ramp test. Then AI FTP detection is even better, substantially better. So the 20-minute, I'm not saying that like it's the best way to get good results. I just would rather do the 20-minute all-out effort than I would the ramp test, which I know is weird for a person that's a puncher and like everything else, but I think it's because I have psychological trauma from doing the ramp test live streamed in front of like 20,000 people. So
I would also have trauma from that.
I will never psychologically recover from this. Okay, hoods rotated inward or vertical, like in line with your drops?
Inward.
Okay. You just made a lot of like older cyclists really upset with that one.
I know, I was scared.
Yeah. Coconut crumb donuts or Hostess apple pie for a mid-ride gas station stop?
Man, this is actually such an intense question. I feel like, so the coconut crumb donut, I think would actually be my preference, but it's too dry for a mid-ride gas station stop. So I have to go with the apple pie.
Oh, yeah. Those apple pies hit. Yep. Leadville or Unbound?
Leadville.
Intervals on climbs or flats?
Climbs. All day long climbs. I have to force myself to go do intervals on flats every now and then.
It's the gravel lifestyle, though. It's good to,
exactly.
good to do them on the flats. Road or mountain bike pedals?
It depends what I'm doing, for sure. I switch back and forth all the time.
Now, here's the question, the final one, the 15th, the one that I wanted to ask you, really why I made this whole thing up. Cape Epic is going on as of us recording this. After when people hear this, it will be after the fact. Your dream Cape Epic teammate?
You're going to be so disappointed that this is the whole reason you made this up, but I don't think I can say that on this podcast because I've wanted to do the Cape Epic for so long, and the partner element of it is definitely the thing that I think for a lot of people is kind of like the clutch situation, right? Is finding someone with the same goals, maybe the same sponsors, the same training status at that point in time. Like it is a whole equation to find the right teammate at the right time, and largely what makes that race so interesting. So I am actively thinking about my teammates, and I have several in mind. So I don't want to drop their names here just yet of the people that I would be talking to, but maybe maybe someone can also give me a brand new idea. So maybe if you have someone that you want me to partner with, leave it in the comments.
Oh, I like that. Very good, Hannah. Very good engagement activation. That was fantastic. I agree. Let us know who you'd like to see Hannah race with. And just wipe brands away from it. Think of brand agnostic. Let us know who you would want to see Hannah race with. It'd be really exciting. Right now, the race is going on. It's the heat, quite literally, is being turned up. The athletes are riding. Today, it was about 100 degrees on them. And it's only getting, and I think it's supposed to stay that way for the rest of the race. And it really, really ramps up here in terms of the difficulty. So It'll be exciting.
Exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this question is from Dave. Dave submitted this question at trainerroad.com/podcast. You can submit them down in the YouTube comments or there, however you wish. It says, Dear Trainer Road coaches, a little help, please. A quick bit of background. I'm relatively new to road cycling, 3 to 4 years. I'm a 46-year-old firefighter, have a VO2 of 71. Wow, that's Dave. You're an athlete. Lab tested in December, and an FTP of 4.12 watts per kilogram on TrainerRoad at 73 kilograms. It mentions it did a ramp test coming off of being sick, and I think the initial number of 294 was low. Okay, so like this person's relatively new to cycling, has a VO2 max of 71, is already at 4.12 watts per kilogram. Dave, you missed your calling. But I'm glad that you're helping people with all your fitness to fight fires. So
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your service. I started riding a few years ago and untrained peaked at about 4.6 watts per kilogram at 79 kilograms. A lot of people are really angry hearing that. I typically sleep well off shift and fuel well. And he's saying off shift because firefighters and the long shifts that they end up pulling, the block shifts. I have 2 goals. 5 watts per kilogram, and not to be a danger to anyone when I join a local cycling club in the spring for some competitive group rides and maybe even race a little. I realize numbers don't mean everything, and I'm prepared to be schooled, but I would like to be competitive. I have a tendency to, quote, do too much and want to do more. This brings me to my questions, and I can affirm that's the case after looking at your account, by the way. Here, Dave. You say, number 1, I think my estimated FTP is too low, so I have many times made workouts harder. Can I replace workouts on my TrainerRoad calendar with harder ones if I feel I'm up for it, or should I let AI do its thing regardless of if it feels too easy? And then I'm going to read the second one, and then we'll get into the third separately, but we'll just address these first 2. Number 2, a lot of the time I find my recovery wattage between hard intervals too easy at around 120 watts, and I prefer a little more resistance at around 160 to 180 watts. Am I ruining the workout if I do more, even if my heart rate drops quickly and I'm I'm recovering well? And the third question, will this type of doing more stunt my growth for 5 watts per kilogram? And is my goal realistic as I age? Thanks so much. Love the content, learning so much about this great sport. Feel free to rake me and my account over the coals. Honesty will make me stronger. Okay, so Hannah, I looked at Dave's account, looked through it. And Dave, you're due for an FTP detection anytime, and you've got a surprise waiting for you. So just gonna say that. So open that gift. Go use AI FTP detection. Your FTP has gone up. Your ramp test was probably a little too low even in the beginning, and it's gone up. So yes, there is that in mind. Now, with that said, and this is really critical for people to understand that don't use TrainerRoad, the training isn't just bound by your FTP. You have been doing progressively harder threshold workouts. You've been getting ramped up in your difficulty levels, even at a higher rate than I would have expected. And it's because you're doing these workouts, then you're answering your post-workout surveys. And in some cases, those harder workouts are being moderate for you, and you're marking them as moderate. And then TrainerRoad is like, got it, got the memo. We'll get you ramped up a little bit faster here. And as a result, you're getting some harder workouts. However, there are some absolute red flags to me in some situations where you've taken on, and you've even noticed this, Dave, because at one point you picked one workout and it was so substantially, significantly harder than anything you had done before that you didn't finish it. And you had mentioned the fact that you were fatigued, that sort of thing, but also the workout was just extremely hard. And then in some cases, I can see that your sweet spot workouts are hard and very hard, that sort of thing. And if you're going to be rating them like that, that's going to send a signal to TrainerRoad to be hey, maybe we don't need to just ramp him up at crazy amounts. But the tricky thing here is you're trying to manually pick the workouts to be harder, but then you're answering hey, guess what? It was too hard for me. So TrainerRoad's yeah, I know. I was just trying to get you to work out at the right intensity this whole time, but you were picking a little bit too much. So this is definite. There is a situation here, Hannah, where an athlete is doing too much. What are your thoughts when you see athletes like this? Because this is not just unique to Dave. This is across the board and also across the ability spectrum. What would you tell an athlete that has a tendency to do too much, to make their workouts too hard, to just do too much?
Yeah, I think I'm glad you asked that because my feedback for Dave was very generalized because I know that you can see their training history. But I feel like this is such a common thing, all the way down to, hey, I think my FTP was low, or I think my test was low because of XYZ. Like 95% of people think that. Some are correct, many
Yeah,
are not.
I'm never satisfied with whatever my FTP is. It always should be higher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that a lot of us go into these workouts with this almost like chip on our shoulder, right? Of like, oh, I can do this. It's too easy. And the biggest mistake you can make is altering the workouts completely. Like just picking an entirely different hard workout, because then, yes, it is too hard. You're not working in the appropriate zones. You're getting fatigued without getting the correct training stimulus. And then you're going to start getting all out of whack because you're going to go too hard, not be able to do the next workout. You're going to start breaking down consistency. And overall, it will not make you faster. That said, I'm like so hesitant to say this because I want people to hear it correctly. But if you truly feel like things are too easy and you want to challenge yourself, the best way is not to pick a new workout. It's to push up consistently on the upper end of the intervals. So if your interval is at, say, 200 watts, and you find that you can do every 10-minute interval at 205 or 210, that would be an okay way to push up in your numbers if you can be consistent across all of the intervals. If you do that on interval 1 and 2 and fall off on 5, you don't get to do that again because you just showed that the interval was actually good enough. If you are in zone for all 4 and then you do an all-out effort on number 5, again, not the workout. So it's pushing upward consistently. And Jonathan, you tell me if I'm correct, but I'm guessing that if you have a coach, your coach will see that and say, oh, look, your training can be enhanced. And I'm guessing TrainerRoad would do the same. It would see those intervals and say, oh, look, this was too easy for them. We will adapt to these numbers that they are producing.
100%. And I think even a better, the best way to go about this with TrainerRoad is to do the workout as prescribed. Then at the end, the reason that we made the post-workout survey so simple and just asking you, how did that effort feel? And like, that's the key, just asking you how the effort felt. Because we did that, if you do the workout as prescribed, then ask how it felt. The next workout is going to ramp you up at a faster rate than what you would have had if it does indeed feel too easy, right? So it's like, it's a really crucial thing to keep in mind. You mentioned consistency, and I think that this is maybe the biggest concern that I have for athletes that want to do too much, especially an athlete in this case, like Dave's situation, where relatively untrained, they were at 4.6 watts per kilogram. Truthfully, like this is a world-class level athlete. Like if you're at that level, right? You probably have a really long leash. Like, whereas a person listening to this is like, if I do just a hair too much, I blow up instantly. Or as somebody's listening to this and like, I dream of getting to 3.5 watts per kilogram, right? They might have a lot shorter leash in terms of how reckless they can be with training load and intensity. In your case, Dave, you probably have a really long leash. So you might not even notice the detrimental effects of doing too much for a significant period of time. And it might just feel like more is more and more is better. And you feel like you're just dosing it with more and you respond every day. And in your mind, you're just like, I'm Superman and this is incredible. Which, Dave, to be frank, you might actually be. You might be Dave, just never like explored here. So, but with that, it does catch up eventually. And then the hard part is once it's caught up and if you have a really long leash and you did it for a really long time, it's really hard to come back from it. And hearing that psychology that, I would encourage anybody with a psychology of feeling like you always want to do more. And even if you have anxiety that you're not doing enough and you always need to be doing more instead of just wanting to do more, whatever it is, I would encourage you to take all that energy and refocus it into recovery and refocus it into focusing on hitting your marks with precision. There's something to be said about the athlete that is able to operate just below what their capacity is, but to do so with endless consistency versus an athlete that can just push their limits. Anybody can push their limits. Some people can do it more than others. But what differentiates a really successful athlete from an athlete that is just going to be a flash in the pan is one that actually sticks to the marks. And take all that energy that you had that wanted to do more, bottle it up for the race days. Bottle it up for the test days or the consequential days that you have built up in your mind. Brandon, our COO here, who was my partner during Cape Epic, he lived and trained at the Olympic Training Center for triathlon. He's an absolutely stellar athlete. I swear I've watched him put himself into the ground over the course of one single ride after not training for 4 months. And I think he super compensated before the end of the ride and he was somehow already fitter. It was nuts. So he always had this perspective that he would never do the quote freshman kick at the end of workouts or races, at the end of workouts. He would never allow himself to exceed what his coach was prescribing, even if it felt easy. And he would take all that energy up, and his goal was, I'm going to save all that energy so it's like a turbo boost that I can use on race day. I'm not going to let it out. I'm not going to let it fizzle. I'm going to bottle it. I'm going to hold it up. So then when it really matters, I have even extra emotional energy that I can put into my performance on the day that it really matters. And when you think of it in that regard, training, your goal shouldn't be to reach totally unexplored new realms of fitness with every ride and performance with every ride. Instead, it's to be strategic, and it's supposed to dose specific amounts of stress here and there, and then allow yourself to recover from it. Racing or performing in whatever context it is, whatever your goal is, that's when you approach it with just unbridled curiosity, open, there's no constraints, and you can just go. So if you can compartmentalize that, I think it will help you, Dave. And Hannah, I don't know how you feel about those thoughts there. I mean, you're the pro. I'm far from it.
Yeah, I think something that someone like Dave might need to hear is that it's important to remember that not all workouts are all out. And I think that's something that as a society outside of this space, like TrainerRoad, high-level athlete, and by high-level athlete, I mean anyone who is doing interval workouts, because we're taught as a society, no pain, no gain. And so most people who start doing structured training have this idea that I need to go in and I need to push hard every single day. And when you're trying to make consistent improvements, it's simply not true. And for me, like you're saying, bottle it up for race day. That's an excellent mindset and approach. Another mindset and approach is quite literally understanding the physiology. That has really helped me stay committed to the way that I train, because I understand that there are certain adaptations that my body can only make with oxygen or aerobically, like increasing capillary density or increasing cardiac stroke volume. These are things you can't do within your body if you're going all out. And so you do have to have plenty of days where you're finishing the workout knowing that you have more in the tank. And so when you're doing something like a sweet spot workout, you should understand that you shouldn't finish that workout feeling like, oh my gosh, I gave it everything. That if that's the case, you didn't do that workout correctly. And some of that comes with experience.
Or it was the wrong workout.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that comes with experience. Like for me, I can do a workout and say, oh, this feels like threshold or this feels like sweet spot because I've been doing it for a decade or more.
Right.
Sometimes if you don't have that experience, you have to rely on the numbers, the equations, the systems, the FTP detection, all of these things, and just trust it. And over time, you will also develop that detection within yourself, knowing, okay, I'm in the zone. I'm doing it correctly.
Yeah, really well said, Hannah. So Dave, our advice, you already know that you have a tendency to want to do too much, as you've mentioned in the question. Yeah, step back from it. Definitely don't go after it. Now, the final question, will this type of doing more hold you back on your quest for going for 5 watts per kilogram? And is this realistic as I age? It certainly seems realistic if you were at 4.6 relatively untrained. It's there for you. I think you can achieve it. And yes, absolutely, the doing more approach will stand in your way. You follow Hannah's advice, and I think that you'll be much better off there.
Did we address their question of the harder recovery in between?
Oh, we didn't. And that's super crucial. Like, Hannah, I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I'm sure we're on the same page with that. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about it?
To be honest, I don't think it matters that much, but in that same sentence, it doesn't matter that much. So just go easier. You're not gaining anything by going 40 watts harder other than maybe tiring out your legs for the next interval. And this is also a
Which doesn't
sign.
make fatigue.
Mm-mm.
Fatigue in and of itself is not productive.
No,
right?
no, exactly. And so I read that and I think, again, I think you're falling into a little bit of the mindset of more is more. And it's not. Just spin more, like spin easier, enjoy that recovery, and hit those intervals. I'm not going to say harder, I'm going to say better. And if you're really struggling to force yourself to spin easier, use that time for something else. For example, maybe that's a chance to work on cadence. Maybe you need to shift down and you're working on spinning really efficiently during that time. Maybe you're working on nutrition. Maybe between every interval, instead of bumping up those numbers, you're taking in hydration or fuel. Maybe you're practicing body position. You said you want to be in group rides. Maybe this is a chance in between to, can you get more comfortable in the aero position, bending your arms better in the bars. Like, this is a chance if you're really struggling. The answer isn't push harder, but there are things you can do to still maybe scratch that itch of like, I want to improve even when I'm going easy.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I'm going to go as far as to say it's useless for you in this situation, Dave, to be like, I'm going to spin harder. It's only hurting you. And instead refocus that energy, like Hannah said. Diligence and discipline makes for a better athlete than just simply pushing as hard as he can. That's a general thing that I think is really hard for us to understand. Mateo's question says, "You people are phenomenal. Thank you for everything. I'll join your community soon." Awesome. Stoked to hear it, Mateo. We're eager to have you. I actually have 2 questions, and when he says join the community, by the way, we don't have like a commune or something. It's not some sort of a cult. It's just TrainerRoad. That's what he's talking about. He's going to sign up for TrainerRoad. I actually have 2 questions. Then Mateo mentions FTP is at 3.5 watts per kilogram for reference at 280 watts. First question, I noticed that my zone 2 power, using a 5-zone model, is almost 20% higher at the same zone 2 heart rate at 70 RPM compared to 95 RPM. And he mentions that I used that 95 RPM to aim at typically to make the legs feel better and more engaged when training. And the same-ish applies at higher power. Further testing revealed that I can actually hold this higher zone 2 power at 70 RPM for up to 2.5 hours with steady heart rate. So I'm wondering whether this has to deal with muscle cardio balance and maybe I'm just a natural grinder, or whether this is nonsense and my legs are going to fall apart soon. Let's address that question first. What do you think about this, Hannah? Cadence, the end goal is power, but he's noticing a different heart rate response at different cadence at the same power.
This is a question after my own heart because I've worked on cadence for so many years and I understand the struggle. I am also a natural grinder. I fall into that like 70 RPM. That is a very comfortable space for me as well. But you must overcome this, Mateo. Let me tell you. And the reason is you can get away with this at lower zones. But you're practicing bad habits that will not help you as you continue to increase your power and increase your fitness. So Understanding that power is force times velocity means that the faster you turn over the pedals, the less force you need to put into them. Or in your case, the slower you turn them over, the more force you need. So this feels good to you because you're putting a lot of force into the pedals, and that's sending a signal to your brain of like, oh, I'm doing a lot, or I feel, as you say, really engaged. But the issue is that in zone 2 power, you get away with this because the power isn't that high. So you can produce enough force to comfortably hold 70 RPMs. But when you get into VO2 and the power is very high, you cannot produce that amount of force at that low of cadence needed to hit those numbers. And if you do for one interval, as you said, your legs will blow up soon. And so that's where when you start getting into those higher numbers, you have to have a higher cadence because you won't be able to produce the force necessary at those lower cadences. And so all the way back around to you can't practice the bad habit. Just because this feels good in a zone 2 ride, it's not going to benefit you throughout all of your zones, throughout all of your racing, training, group rides, whatever it might be. This is something you need to practice across all zones so that you can be an efficient rider, both at the high end and the low end.
Really well said. There's with low cadence versus high cadence at this same power, effectively what you're doing is you're shifting the bottleneck in the whole process of being able to put out power on the bike. When you're at low cadence, you're going to be shifting that bottleneck onto the muscle fibers themselves, the sort of strain that they can, and the tension that they can maintain for a certain period of time, and that high force they can create. And when you shift it the other way and you're spinning at a high cadence, you're moving it over to your circulatory system and your ability to be able to provide the resources, pull everything that's bad, all the byproduct away, do all that stuff. And as a result, you're kind of, both things are at play. It's like scissors, like one blade. You can't just use one blade of the scissors. You need to use both, right? And in this case, you need to have both pieces in place. And you should probably take this as a sign that you need to sharpen one of those scissor blades. And this is one that you can do, just like Hannah said, with higher cadence. Now, this is important, though, because a lot of people look at zone 2 training and they look at cardiac drift as a key indicator of your aerobic fitness and your ability to, beyond just fitness, also from the cycling perspective. Like, a lot of people keep track of where LT1 and LT2 are, and they tie it so closely to zone 2 training, and it becomes absolutely everything for them. I will note that if you're spinning at a higher cadence than you're typically used to, you're likely going to see some different kinetics going on in the muscles, and even some different blood lactate values that you're going to see. It's going to be a foreign and novel experience for your body compared to what it's used to. So there's a bit of an assumption that it's very clear cut and dry, and no matter like what cadence you're at, no matter what conditions you're in, you're always going to be the same lactate value exactly at that. Your thresholds are going to be exactly the same. And in the end, and this is why we at TrainerRoad actually kind of we look to all potential avenues and new horizons with data with a lot of excitement, but we also we aren't flippant, and we aren't just like jumping from trend to trend. Instead, we make sure that we're adhered to power because that's an objective output of what you're doing. It's not some sort of novel, interesting, different, extrapolation or measurement of something that's going on in your body, but instead it's the actual power you're outputting, and that's extremely important. And then aside from that, we want to make sure that we're just really trusting established science behind this whole thing to make sure you're progressing well. With all this said, if you are looking at this and you're thinking that I'm actually fitter at a certain cadence than I am at a different cadence, the answer is not that you're fitter. You're just more used to putting out power at that specific type of cadence. And it's a really good idea to differentiate. And like Hannah said, especially as you get to those higher power outputs. But all this to say, this I think exposes kind of like a flaw in the very simplified zone 2 prescription model that a lot of people have, where it's just like, do a lot of zone 2, make sure your heart rate doesn't drift. That might not be the best way to make you a faster cyclist. You might actually be missing some opportunity with that zone 2 training to drive a bit more meaningful adaptation. So I think that's a key point to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. And I think Yes, exactly like you're saying. I think that this is an exciting discovery, Mateo. Don't be discouraged. This is an area of opportunity. You can get faster because you discovered this. Just because you discover that you're doing something less than optimally, you shouldn't feel negative. You should feel like, "Oh my gosh, that means I can be even better." And that's very exciting. My encouragement to you though would be, it is hard. As someone who has this tendency, it has taken me a long time and a lot of cognitive effort to fix this in my own cycling. And so don't expect to go out and ride 3 hours tomorrow at 95 RPMs. This
Mhm.
will be very hard for you to make a switch like that if you're anything like me. And so my encouragement would be, since this is can be, if you've been doing this for a long time, such a huge mental effort, meaning you have to think the whole time about having a higher cadence, section it out within your ride to start. Don't just feel like, okay, I'm going to go do this ride and I'm going to do it all at 95 RPMs. That'll be overwhelming and frustrating, most likely. Instead, use times within your ride, like warm up and cool down. Hit that 95 RPMs the whole time. If you're doing a long aerobic ride, maybe you do, okay, the next 20 minutes are at 95, and then I'm going to take 10 minutes rest at what I'm comfortable with, and back and forth until it does become second nature.
Yeah, really well said. The second question, Garmin's quote performance condition estimates your physical condition during training. Granted, it might be inaccurate, but the pattern I consistently observe is a bad score all throughout my initial training time or before my intervals, and then up to 1.5 hours into like the Z2 training, I think is what they're saying here. It then starts to rise to be a good condition during the first hard interval, and then remaining as such during the remainder of the workout. Can this come from a lack of warm up, and any suggestions for cool down and stretching post workout? Cheers, love and kisses from Italy. Okay, so yes, and loving kisses to you too. Sorry for just moving on past that point. Okay, Matteo, I personally wouldn't put any stock into that. I see that metric as well. And I don't think that that should be any sort of indication of what you're capable of, whether it's trying to analyze whether you do a warm up or something else. I don't know if it's trying to analyze how warmed up you are or anything like that. All I know is that my performance condition seems to be like a random number generator for me. It's like whenever I haven't used a Garmin in probably 6 months or so, but whenever I would turn it on or I had a Garmin watch, it would tell me like, today's going to be terrible. And I'd be like, well, I'm still going to go out and train. I feel fine. And then I'd do my workout just fine. So that's at least, I don't know that. Hannah, I don't know if you have any input on that. I know you don't use Garmin stuff there,
Yeah,
but
I don't use Garmin. I use Koros, but for this question, I did look up what they're trying to use for performance condition. And it does say that it analyzes pace, heart rate, and heart rate variability to try and give a performance condition. I would ignore this because,
yeah.
especially at the start of the workout, that is the start of a workout, and your warm up is your chance to not look at metrics. That's a time when
Yes.
you should be in tune with your body. I know I go out some days, I start and I think, wow, I feel really good. And I immediately start putting that pressure into the pedals. I start ramping up and it feels great. Some days I go out and I think, just going to spin for an extra 5 minutes, and you just kind of look around and enjoy. That's not an indicator of my workout. That's an indicator of my mindset as I get on the bike and the time that I need to feel prepared for the ride. And if I'm looking at a device that's trying to anticipate how that will impact my workout, the only way that will impact me is probably negatively.
Yeah.
Honestly, for better or for worse, if it tells me, wow, you're super ready, sometimes that also doesn't feel good. Sometimes it's like, excuse me, no, I'm tired. Just let
Yes.
me be. And so for me, this is something that I personally would just completely ignore. And you know how you feel. This is something that I like to journal, to write down as a reminder for myself and to note patterns. because there are so many times that when I feel this way, this happens. When I feel this way, this happens. And it allows me to begin to trust myself, my intuition, and my body. And also sometimes remember, sometimes I'll journal, felt terrible today, didn't want to get on the bike. And then I'll come back and I'll journal, crushed my workout, best numbers ever. And that in and of itself is a confidence booster, because sometimes I have a race where feel terrible, don't want to get on the bike. And then I read that journal entry and I say, but it could be the best race ever. So don't put stock into this. Just trust yourself and trust your own feelings and surprise yourself with every workout.
I call this a fate sealer.
Yeah.
And I'm not big on fate sealers. I just don't think that there's much value in them. And I think that they can hold us back from our training and hold us back from our performance. And understanding what it's looking at, pace, heart rate, and HRV. Sorry, this is going to sound like I'm really dogging on, but I would absolutely not pay attention to that. Heart rate is famously variable. Your HRV as well during activities, and the fact that it could actually get like a really solid read, you never know if it's actually going to be good there. There's a lack of scientific data to suggest that HRV is a reliable metric to use to define readiness to train. There's a whole lot of marketing out there to suggest otherwise, but in terms of scientific research, it's inconclusive in that regard in showing that it is reliable. And pace as well. Like, what if you're riding downhill or uphill when you're warming up? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like it's such a different thing. So anyways, yeah, I wouldn't consider it. Instead, Mateo, trust your body and you'll do better off. Carl's question. Carl says, sorry if you've answered this before. If so, please point me in the right direction. Carl, we've probably answered most questions before, but we learn every time we talk about them just the same in 518 episodes or whatever. We're 525 at this point. I'm a runner turned triathlete with a question about zone 2 training. My FTP is 305 on my road bike, slightly lower on my TT bike. Glad that it's just slightly lower. For me, it is massively lower. I hate the TT bike. Then, as mentioned here by Carl says, I weigh 76 kilograms. When I do long rides in zone 2 at around 190 to 200 watts, my heart rate rarely goes above 120 beats per minute, while my running lactate threshold heart rate is 173, which is well below my zone 2 heart rate zone, and I'm not really sure what to make of this. It seems to me that it is a discrepancy between my muscular and aerobic efficiency, but at this zone training, I'm not engaging my aerobic system. So this is the assumption that they have in this case. What do you suggest I do? I'm thinking that maybe midway through my ride, I should include a couple 10 to 15 minute intervals in upper zone 2, lower zone 3 to engage my aerobic system. But I'm worried this would negate the benefits of a zone 2 ride. I'm so triggered by all this. Should I worry about this? If so, how should I modify my training to get my power zones and heart rate zones more in line? Love your show. Thanks for taking the time to consider this question from Carl. Hannah, I need you to go first. Otherwise, I'm going to go off.
Okay. I'll keep it short then. Oh, please don't include intervals in your zone 2 rides.
Yeah.
So running heart rate and cycling heart rate are always going to be different. So when I read this, my first question is, but what is your max heart rate on the bike? Like, don't compare your bike heart rate to your running heart rate. And for a variety of reasons, but you see even in lab testing and in, for example, VO2 max testing, VO2 max on the bike and running are two wildly different things because of the musculature involved. In terms of what muscles are involved, and also many people on the bike, their musculature is what limits them because it's so hard to produce power on the bike for many people. In college with an exercise science major, we did many of testings on the bike, and I, of course, was always asked to do it largely because most people who are not cycling trained can't get a VO2 max test done on the bike because they can't push that hard in the cycling realm versus in running, most of us can. And so just because it's different on the bike doesn't mean it's inaccurate on the bike. So you need to stick with your cycling zones and not fall into your running zones. And if you are questioning this, to the degree that you need more affirmation, I would figure out what your max heart rate is on the bike, and you will probably discover that your Z2 heart rate on the bike is in line with that.
Yep, it's not uncommon to see higher heart rates with running because of more muscular recruitment that's going on to be able to propel you forward, higher VO2 max, everything else like that. Carl, if you use TrainerRoad, which I think I looked there and it doesn't look like you have an account. If you use TrainerRoad, it takes care of this zone 2 issue for you. The fact is that a lot of people are afraid to go above like the very base of zone 2 or middle of zone 2 because then they feel like, oh, well, then I might be getting to the point where I'm not doing quote zone 2 training. And we kind of treat it like it's a fragile egg and we don't want to crack it. When in reality, like your ability to operate predominantly aerobically within zone 2, you can probably ride at a higher percentage of your FTP and still be well within zone 2. And you don't have to feel like you're doing something wrong there. Now, you can, again, we talked about a lot of people looking at like aerobic decoupling with their zone 2 heart rate, everything else. Again, I'm not really sure that that's the most effective North Star. The most effective North Star for you would be to have a well-structured training plan that's going to be pushing your abilities and then to just hit your marks on your workouts and to have that prescribed for you. What TrainerRoad would do in this case is that you would probably be getting workouts that are pushing you closer to the upper half of zone 2. And as a result, you're probably going to be, because it's clearly, at least from what you're talking about, it seems like you've progressed past that point. And TrainerRoad, of course, would be moving you along a progression. You would understand, or it would understand that about you. But in total here, I think that, again, this highlights another frailty of this like very strict model of zone 2 training is magic and totally unique, and it's very fragile and you can't change it and you can't go out of that. I think that we've seen this really commonly over the years with a lot of different trends, and the trend, there's science that underlies it, but trend is the interpretation of the science in many cases, meaning that, yes, if you operate at zone 2 and you do that for an extended period of time, and you're truly sitting there right around your lactate thresholds that are crucial that you're focusing on, then you can drive really meaningful adaptations, but then you can do so without incurring a lot of fatigue, allowing space and room for you to do really hard training, right? And to be able to do that. But the simple fact is, if you look at how most athletes train, if you look at the absolute world's elite that have a bunch of time to train and can recover from a lot, they will be doing a very strictly polarized model. And there's a research paper that I'll link below on this that was recently put out that looked at this across a bunch of different studies. And basically what it showed is that as your training volume goes down, a more pyramidal instead of polarized approach is generally going to deliver better results. Neither are going to be bad approaches, but it's generally going to deliver better results. And that just makes sense. You can only do, if you're training 40 hours a week and you're trying to just do like a perfectly pyramidal shape in terms of the training intensity distribution, you're going to be wrecked. Like you can't do that with that much training volume. Just like on the other side of things, you can't expect a lot of adaptation if you're not really putting in a lot of volume, if you're just doing that very strictly, just doing zone 2 and then doing the hard stuff. So I'd recommend a more relaxed approach to this. And the best way to relax about it is to have a training plan that's well laid out for you, that's going to take care of those progressions. And then you can just focus on hitting your marks. If you do that, I think you'll be in a much better spot. In general, this is my own perspective. I basically never pay attention to my heart rate. I don't care about it when I'm training on the bike. I don't care about it at all. Sometimes in post, I look at it. But even then, I feel like I have such a big grain of salt handy that I don't put any weight behind what it means to me. So I'd much rather look at power, and I'd much rather be disciplined to power targets and just knowing that I'm doing the best I can to recover in between. And I think that that's sound advice for a lot of athletes because it'll simplify training for them. We have one more question, Hannah. Maybe I think we can get to it, maybe, in the 9 minutes that we have left here. Will says, I'm following the TrainerRoad training plan. I executed a high-intensity session on Saturday morning. The session was executed more or less perfectly. However, TrainerRoad then gave me a yellow day on Sunday and reduced my training stress for that session. If it was planned and executed without additional training stress or intensity factor, why would TrainerRoad need to adapt if it was planned? I suspect my heart rate, data, and RPE response prompted it to adapt for me. From Will. So, Will, I looked into your account on this one. And this is going to bring up probably a good discussion point about training principles in general. But you didn't do anything wrong. You did fantastic. TrainerRoad didn't do anything wrong. It's all working together for your good. Yellow days. So what TrainerRoad does is it keeps track of since we've been able to analyze over 250 million rides from athletes of all abilities, it's able to recognize patterns in how much fatigue a specific athlete can sustain while still getting positive training adaptations. And as a result, it tries to give you some guidance on how to adjust your training. So sometimes you'll get yellow days. Sometimes those yellow days will like make your workouts easier. Sometimes you'll get red days. And in those red days, it'll tell you just to take a day off. And in this case, with Will's situation, did an interval workout, next day had an endurance day, and then had a yellow day. Yellow days are great. They're not bad. You'll bump into them consistently. In fact, Nate and I and Hannah, all the three of us looked at Hannah's account recently with TrainerRoad, and Hannah has this like beautiful pattern of like consistently incurring yellow days and then like respecting them with incredible precision, even though Hannah has not known that she's been yellow because she hasn't been looking at it in that regard. But you see this with the best athletes that are really good and disciplined at training, is that they'll have a yellow day come up and they just, whether it's through them, with their coach, through their own intuition, they know, they're so dialed in that they know that they needed to go a bit easier that day. So yellow days are not bad, first of all, Will. So there was no problem here. But the second point to understand with TrainerRoad is that your training plan, as of today, of recording this, we're on Tuesday, March 18th. The workout that you have on March 30th, ignore it for now. It doesn't matter. As you get closer to that, TrainerRoad's constantly getting data for you, and it will be adjusting. So like the way that I look at it is tomorrow's workout isn't relevant until I've completed today's. And then at that point, then it gets more information and it has everything that it needs to adjust it. In this case, looking at what you did, Will, you had some extra activities that you had added in over the recent time period. And as a result, TrainerRoad is just making sure that you know, hey, we're going to just back off a little bit on this not consequential, easy endurance day, and we're going to make it ever so slightly easier. And because of doing that, just making it ever so slightly easier, we think that it's going to set you up for success for the next day. So you did nothing wrong. All it is this is what training looks like. Training should be adjusted constantly. It should never be templated. We actually have an update that we're going to be launching here with TrainerRoad that you'll be able to see at some point. I don't know when we'll launch this, but you aren't even going to get to see what your workout is tomorrow or the next day until you've done today's workout. It's just going to be blurred out and it's going to show you what sort of workout it is, but that's it. To help clear up this sort of confusion where athletes feel like, this is my trajectory, I need to follow it perfectly. That's not how training works. Training is constantly evolving and adapting and changing through your life circumstances, and you need to be able to follow that. So you didn't do anything wrong, Will. It was all good. You're all set. Hannah, do you have any thoughts on that about like this? I mean, you're very type A and very programmatical in the way that you think. And in our minds, like it would be great in our minds to say that like, okay, it's December 31st right now. So on January 1st, I'm going to have this workout. On February 1st, I'm going to have this one. And we have like these benchmarks that we line out. And in a dream world, we would just sure be able to like fill everything out on a perfectly linear trajectory. But it doesn't work that way, right?
Absolutely not. And I think also to have that mindset is limiting as well. Because what if you surprise yourself? What if you're even beyond that when you reach there? And so I think it's important to, a lot of the time in our minds, we take worst case scenario of, well, if this, then this bummer. But if we're willing to let our mind go down that path, we also have to be willing to let it go down the best case scenario path of like, well, if this, then wow, what if I achieved this? And so I think it's important to understand that, as Jonathan's saying, nothing is set in stone. And if you follow the plan, you will end up at the right place.
Yeah, it just needs to be adapting constantly to you because you're adapting. You're changing all the time. So, Hannah, thanks a bunch for joining us. What's next for you for racing and everything else? Is it Sea Otter?
Sea Otter.
All right. That's
Yep.
exciting. Well, hopefully people listen to this. There's so many people at that large event. There's chances are you'll see Hannah if you're there. If you do see Hannah, keep an eye out on her Instagram. I'm sure, Hannah, that you're going to have, like, because your sponsors are probably going to have you stopping by booths on Friday after you race on Thursday, that sort of thing. So then you could go and like see Hannah and meet her, which would be really cool. You can cheer Hannah on Thursday of that week at Sea Otter. That's when they're doing the Lifetime Grand Prix gravel race. Super exciting. Excited for you.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic. Thanks for joining us. Everybody, if you appreciated having Hannah on, let us know. If you have any additional questions, maybe from something about zone 2 training, like we talked about today, polarized training, pushing too hard and falling back and taking a different approach. If you have a TrainerRoad account or an athlete question that you want us to analyze, you can put it down below in the YouTube description, in the YouTube comments. So go do that now. Share this podcast with your friends and go sign up at TrainerRoad.com to get faster. You can get our AI recommended workout every day in Zwift or on your head unit. It's that easy. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.